Hey, what's up, everybody? This is an open discussion with C3 Films. My name is Chris, and this is.
Cheryl.
And today we're going to be talking about the series from Guillermo del Toro, Cabinet of Curiosities. So of this recording, this is our Halloween episode. That's why we are wearing, well, Cheryl is wearing her outfit, and I am just wearing a regular student shirt and tie because we're also celebrating our season finale that we're recording on our Twitch channel, which you can go check us out on our Twitch channel, twitch.tv/C3 Films. Be great to see you over there. But with that being said, this episode we are talking about Cabinet of Curiosity, which is out on Netflix as of this recording, and we will be going into spoiler territory for the first two episodes of the series. So if you have not seen it, go check it out, watch it. You can watch them in any order; they're all anthologies, and come back and see what we had to say about the show. So without further ado, let's go ahead and just jump right into this. So the whole thing about I was waiting for this series because of the fact that it's Guillermo del Toro. I know that we both love Guillermo del Toro for similar reasons, but also for various different types of movies that we've watched from him. But regardless, we enjoy his work, and Guillermo del Toro has this very interesting style of being kind of this mix of kind of supernatural horror with like almost kind of like a what is the word? Not Cthulhu. Oh my gosh.
Vintage.
Vintage. Hello, Urza. Welcome in. Um, yeah, it's like I forget the actual term, but you guys know like when you talk about Cthulhu style horror, it'll come to me later. He has that kind of feel to him as well. He also doesn't tend to shy away from violence in his stuff. He'll show it fully on screen in all of its gross glory, and he also has a whimsical side to him as well. So he has a really fun style that can just kind of mix with like straight up horror with fantasy, and it can be a lot of fun. And so when I found out that he was going to be doing an anthology series that was going to be leading up to Halloween, I got really excited because I love experiencing his stuff. And so going into the first two episodes we're going to be talking about, I'll start with the first episode, and we can just go to the second after that. I wasn't really sure what this was going to be. I had seen some trailers, but obviously it's because it's anthology. It's just jumping all around, so you don't know what the episodes are that you're going to get. And then like I just turned it on and started going into it. But I wanted to ask you, Cheryl, did you know about this before I brought it up? Did you have any expectation going in, or knowing that it was Guillermo del Toro, did you have a feeling about what it was going to be going in? Because I also know that you normally don't like horror, which is why I also watched the episodes beforehand to see whether or not you'd be able to actually take it, which I felt like, okay, these first two episodes aren't that bad.
Yeah, I didn't know about the show until you told me about it. And I think that I was excited because of course, it's Del Toro, so I knew it was gonna be good. But I was a little worried that it would be scary.
Mm-hmm.
But overall, I had a good time. And this it's an anthology, and the shows are like each episode is 1 hour long, and I feel like the structure of it was like kind of perfect. Like it got to the point, right? They say that in a short film, it's like a a beginning and then an end. It's a story that like a what do you got? I can't even say it, but it's like a thing and then a payoff of the thing. And that's pretty much what these were. And as simple as they were, it still had something about it that like was very intricate and complex. And I actually thought it was interesting how both characters were like both main
Jerks.
characters. Yeah, they were not good guys, but they but it's so cool that like we're rooting for them. Like we want them to survive because I mean they're the main characters, and somehow like even though they're like you said they're both total jerks, um, you still want them to survive and like get out of it at the end. And I mean, we already said spoilers. Neither of them do.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, but then at the same time, like, you don't feel sad that they didn't make it at the end. So then it really just comes down to the experience of watching them go through this little bit of like this very small journey that they have.
Hmm.
And they were both exciting. Be it, I think the second one was a lot scarier, and like I was like screaming watching the second one.
Yeah, right. Okay, so first off, yes, playing at it. Yes, thank you. It was that Lovecraftian horror. But second of all, like when I was watching this first one specifically, when I saw that main character, actually no, I guess for both characters, my feeling was I kind of wanted them to survive because I wanted them to learn a lesson, right? I wanted to like have them live so that they could change and be better people because they were jerks and they went through this bad thing and it's just like okay, yeah, serves you right. Now go and be a good person. Um, but at the same time, when they did die, there were no tears shed for me. I wasn't like hurt because of the fact that they didn't make it. I was just kind of like, yeah, well, you kind of deserve that. So, especially with the first one, because okay, so with the first story, we follow this guy who isn't necessarily racist, but he does have these kind of feelings of being overlooked, and he does have some type of, I wouldn't say just outright bigotry, but he has a little bit of bigotry that is innate inside of him that's brought upon by this feeling of, for lack of a better term, I guess, feeling like he's been left behind and feeling like the world is not being as supportive of him as it is of other groups. And therefore, he kind of takes that out on these other groups. And so he is not a nice man at all. And the way that this episode is structured, it starts off with this old man dying while cutting up some animal parts. Very, very strange. Very, very strange. Um, and what ends up happening is that he owns a storage unit. And I hadn't thought about this until I saw this episode. But yeah, when someone dies and they don't have family that can take over like a storage unit, the people have to clear that storage unit. So it makes sense that they would hold auctions either for the things inside the unit or for the whole unit itself. And so what they do here is that they hold auctions for the whole unit, and it's kind of like a grab bag. You get to look inside real like for a brief moment, and then they take a bid. They take a bid, and whoever wins the bid gets the unit and all the items inside to do whatever you want with. In the case of our main character, he wants to sell all the items so that he can make some money because he's in over his head and he owes a lot of money to people. So that's the setup for the episode. And then what it gets a little more complicated because the unit that was sold to him, well, one of the other units that he bought, I guess off screen, belonged to a woman that was supposed to have paid it, and there was a clerical error, and because of a miscommunication, she didn't get to pay it, and her unit got sold. So she wanted to go back and get at least some of the stuff from the old unit. But this guy who owns it doesn't want to give her any of her stuff, including her pictures. Which you're kind of like, yo, fam, like, do you really need her pictures? You can't sell those, right? Like, just give her back her pictures. And he's a real douchebag about it. And so at that point, you're kind of just like, yo, dude, whatever happens to you is gonna be way too good for you. But and that's what leads us on the journey that will then go on in the first and continuing in the first episode.
Yeah. Good job, Chris. Explaining all of that. But no, and I thought it was interesting that they were showing the old guy. Like I thought there was gonna be like a big rabbit demon or something in
Mm-hmm.
the shed because at the beginning,
Because of the
the
hops.
yeah, the hops and like the old guy was he was like he was like butchering an animal before,
Mm-hmm.
like right before he died, and it looked like it could have been like a little rabbit or something like that, even though it had like big saber teeth. So I'm not quite sure what kind of animal that was, but I thought
Yeah.
whatever it was, there would be a bigger version of that in the storage unit. So it didn't really quite go the way I thought it
I was
would and
expecting.
expected. So I really like that, but I wish that the hopping part of it was more
Made
explained.
sense. Yeah, because it actually isn't touched upon at all. Like in the story they talk about how this guy, I can't remember, was it that he tried to sacrifice his sister or his cousin or his wife or something to like summon a demon into her, and she disappeared and they couldn't find her, and then at the end you find out that she was in that storage unit all along. But yeah, you're right, they never, and comments can correct us if we're just misremembering, but I don't think that they ever actually talk about why he did that little ritual before he entered and exited the storage unit.
Yeah, I don't think they ever did. And I thought that like maybe the fact that they don't do that when they go into the storage unit, that something would happen, or that it would mark them for something. But it didn't really add anything to it.
Mm-mm.
Um, so that kind of bugged me a little bit because like why else would they show it? So maybe something got written out or something like that. Unfortunately,
Yeah.
because it is hard to tell a story in an hour.
And they did a
Um,
lot. They did talk about a lot in
yeah,
there because also in there we found out that the guy was a Nazi, right?
yeah.
And the people that were kind of trying to buy the books from the main character seem to have also been either Nazis themselves or at the very least they were German. So, but they definitely seemed very interested in this man's history and seemed to have known him and his history very well and the occultic parts that he was a part of.
Yeah, and when the little table rolled out, I was like, oh, I thought that was a thing that would open a door to the back, like when it rolls out, or there was something behind it. But it was
Hmm.
just kind of like, look, here's a thing for you to take, and um, so I'm not quite sure how I feel about it because it just didn't feel natural for the thing to just roll out like that. But I mean,
Hmm.
it's not really a huge deal. I just kept thinking things were gonna happen, and then
That
they
didn't happen.
did. Yeah, but that's not a bad thing. I think that's a good thing, because it keeps you on your toes, and it's not as fun watching something that's predictable. So,
Agreed.
yeah,
And I think that this first episode is is paced. I like the pacing, but out of the episodes that I've seen, and I think I've seen two more than you have, but even within these first two, this one is paced more methodically. I think to me, because when I was first watching it, it felt to me like this could have been a movie with how it was being paced. Because we do find out a lot in a little bit of time, and we don't really see the creature and the creature like elements, the result of like the creature summoning and everything. I want to say until like the last 15 minutes, or maybe even the last 10 minutes of the episode. And so the majority of the episode is devoted to lore and character moments and building and motivation and establishing motivations and fears and stuff. So in that way, it almost did kind of feel like a movie to me. But then when we got to those last like couple of minutes, it's when it says, "Oh no, this is." It almost feels like this is Guillermo del Toro's Twilight Zone, right? This is where he is the host of this Twilight Zone, and they just call it the Cabinet of Curiosities. But I think that the episode after this is paced a little bit more quickly because we get to kind of like the crux of what the fear element is for the in the next episode. And I want to say every episode after this kind of just ramps that up. But I also think that the second episode, and compared to this first episode, is way more gross and scary than this first episode. This first episode is more kind of, it's like demon summoning monster with like a weird mouth thing, and the second one is it's just gross like monsters, but also like mummies. It's crazy.
yeah, and to be honest, just to wrap up our chat on the first one, um, I agree. I thought the pacing was good. I was enjoying myself watching it. Like I said, not really knowing what was gonna happen, and even right up to the end, like I think we kind of figured out that that lady was gonna be the one to
Mm-hmm.
like lock them in the building or like keep them
Yep.
locked in the building, especially since the last interaction they had was him giving her a lock.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that, and it's kind of like messed up. I don't know if she knew that there would be a demon in there because it seemed like there was a hint of like she read something and like
Mm-hmm.
maybe there was something on the lock, but they didn't really like go into it
Yeah.
too much. But I think I think they hinted very subtly that she knew what was in there, or that there was something that could be in there.
Mm-hmm.
And so she really got her revenge, and I really enjoyed that she
It's a
got.
great moment. It's a really great moment, but I also just got worried because I was just like, this story's gonna end, but now I feel bad for anyone that goes there in the morning to open up because now all these other people are gonna die. I'm like, women, you literally just allowed this monster to be unleashed onto the world.
Yeah, like you said, this episode can totally continue. It can totally become a movie. Like that's just like the beginning of a
Mm-hmm.
story, because then there's like the chaos that ensues after. Um,
Exactly.
and and so it didn't really feel like an ending, because he just died. She gets her revenge, and like while it is book ended, it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
quite feel complete because that monster still exists.
Yeah.
Whereas the second one felt a little bit more complete.
Yes.
So
The second one is kind of a more, I guess, well-rounded story in that I mean it kind of has a similar vibe, right? Where it's implied that the thing that's been happening will continue to happen. But I guess it's a little different than the first one because with the first one there was no demon before, and now the status quo of the world has changed because now there is a demon rampant. But in this one, it's the episode starts off with there being rats, and at the end there are still rats. So maybe that's also why the second one feels a little bit better because the status quo of the world is not different than when it begins, at least as far as we come into.
that's true. So let's just start getting into the second one now. Um, it was very that made me so squeamish with like the dead bodies, and like the mouths being open so that he could like pull the teeth out, and he wants the teeth because it has gold on it, and that's apparently how he makes his living. Um, and then he says this thing where like when he's like begging the sharks to like cut him a break, and he's like telling them that like the rats are like taking the stuff, and I'm like, oh, like they just grabbed the tooth, or like he couldn't reach the tooth, and that's why he's saying that.
That's what I
But
thought
then
too.
later we see that like they're actually dragging the body through the
It's
ship.
that's another thing. It's actually funny.
Yeah, I was like I busted out laughing so hard. So I felt like this was an emotional roller coaster because it was kind of all over the place, but like in a way that is still like not taking me out of the the atmosphere. It's not taking me out of the mood of the story. Um, because it is ridiculous, but it's also scary, and it's it allows the things in it to happen, but still like not make you go like that's stupid. It doesn't make sense because of the way that like everything is built. Like yes, it made me laugh, but I think like it's okay because
Hmm.
it's supposed to be
I
ridiculous.
Yes, and I think it's supposed to be ridiculous because when he first gets in there, there is a body, right? He climbs into the body, and then the only thing that happens is that he gets bit by a rat, right? We don't see a whole bunch of rats, but there is a body in there, and then when next time the next scene that we see him in, he's explaining to the guy about why he doesn't have the money, and so this character is kind of like this pseudo fake charismatic type person who talks a lot and just looks and seems to be the type that just comes up with stuff to just stay on the fly that's going to allow him to get what he wants. And so when he starts saying that, oh, I can't get the money because the rats take everything, this, that, and the other, I had the same thought as you. Where I was like, well, on one hand, maybe they're taking like some of the teeth or something like that. But on the other hand, I was just like, it just sounds like he's lying to just try to get out of this. And so that's what you go in thinking. And then, he has these like dreams where he's like all these rats follow him and stuff. And you're just like, okay, yeah, this guy is just like, making stuff up. But then when he opens the body of he opens the coffin of a recently deceased person, and you know that it should be there, and the thing is empty. That's the first time that we all kind of say, wait. what? That doesn't make
Yeah.
sense.
I
And
was
so that's
like,
that first kind of moment of this is weird. And then you see the moment where you see the body actually being dragged out of a hole in the coffin. And it's just like, oh my gosh, he was right. He actually wasn't lying. And I think that realization that he wasn't lying, but telling the truth the whole time is part of what makes that funny. But then that's what leads to what is eventually going to come, which is how that shifts to actually being a squeamish, horror-filled, claustrophobic nightmare. Because I will tell you right now, I told my roommate when we were watching it, I was just like, I am so uncomfortable watching this episode because anytime he gets stuck, anytime he's just like turning corner and not knowing where to go, I'm just like, dude, you're gonna die down here. And I just had this image in my mind of like what it'd be like to be trapped underground with like only a single light, nowhere to go, and like that just that level claustrophobia like terrifies me.
and he was in a graveyard
Yes.
also, which was really scary. Like I can't remember, like being in a cemetery. Like on the one hand, like that makes me a little like wary, like because you know what's there and everything, and there's just you know the vibe that you get when you're in a cemetery, and then he's in the ground, like going into a coffin in the first place. That like is very morbid and
Mm-hmm.
out of the ordinary, very macabre.
Mm-hmm.
This episode, and then he's crawling through tunnels in a graveyard, and then you see like the ultimate rat, and
Yep.
he's just going through all these crazy things. Like he shoots himself
In the foot.
in the foot. He gets poked in the eye, and like you feel so bad for him. Like while he's crawling through this thing, even though like he's doing all of it for like the wrong reasons, and he's just thinking like if I don't do this, I'm gonna die anyway. So
Basically, because like he owes these people money, and that's part of the reason. That's part of the thing we skipped over when we were telling everybody about this. But yeah, he owes a certain people money, and if he doesn't pay up in a week, they're gonna kill him. So he's desperate, and so when a rich royal dies, he's planning on looting the grave so that he can sell the rich royals like items. And so when the rats steal it, it's like he has to go in there because this is his last chance. So like the episode is structured very well where you're kind of wanting to say, dude, don't do it. It's not worth it. But at the other time, but at the same hand, you're saying, well, dude, you don't actually kind of have a choice, right? And like this is kind of ridiculous. And so I think that ties into what you were saying earlier about how you kind of want him to win because you're like, I kind of want you to succeed because I want you to live because you actually were close to being able to live, but now all these different things are happening to get in your way, and it escalates because it was just the rats at first, but then he runs into like the giant rat, which is like, wait, what? There's one of these things down here too, which I could believe. It was blind. It could have been down there forever, and then it escalates even more because then he falls into a chamber that's an underground like church that they had mentioned in the episode, and then he has an Indiana Jones moment.
yeah, and like I saw that mummy, and I was like, oh my gosh, it like that looks like a person, and it's gonna
It's
wake
still
up.
juicy.
Yeah, I was like, it's gonna wake up as soon as he takes it. It's gonna wake up, and I knew it. But then it still made me scream anyway because I'm such a baby when it comes to watching these kinds of things. And like if that wasn't horrifying enough, like that's after him too. And then he finally finds an escape from the mummy, and then he crosses paths with the giant rat again. I'm like, oh great, like this
This
is the
is so
worst,
bad.
the worst. And then like, I mean, finally he takes care of the rat. It's kind of like a two birds with one stone thing. The mummy's still alive because like the hand comes out from behind him and stuff like that. And he's like, okay, I really gotta get out of here. Like I gotta get home free. And then he thinks he sees a light, and of course we know, like as an audience, we know that that's not freedom. And it turns out that he just crawls his way back into another coffin, and that's when he finally dies from being overrun by rats and stuff. And like, my gosh, after all that, he was so close to being
You're so
free. And like
close.
after watching this episode, I was like exhausted. I think
Yeah.
that's why I only watched two because that was like if they were more like the first episode, I think I could have watched more. But after
Mm-hmm.
watching the second one, I was like so exhausted, and it
It's
was
such a roller
like
coaster.
yeah, and I enjoyed it like 100%. Like even though it was scary for me, and I was like, this is gonna give me nightmares, but I had fun watching it, and
Mm-hmm.
like I just had a good time, and but I really needed to watch something else, and I was like, thank goodness we're watching Tales of the Jedi also this week because I really needed that.
You really need a palate cleanser.
Yes, I did.
Well, yeah, I actually think the grossest moment is the end of the first of that second episode where he's in the coffin and then they open and find him and then all the rats climb from inside of him. Like that image just had me going like, "Oh, this is awful." And that's like the last image and you see his body, you see his face and stuff like his eye popping out and stuff like that. I was like, ugh. But I'm glad that you had fun with it because when I watched it, part of the reason I wanted to watch it was because, like I said, we both like Guillermo del Toro, but I also felt that it wasn't as scary as it was interesting or fun. And and you've watched other Guillermo del Toro things, so you know that like there can be horror elements in his stuff, but at the same time, it it doesn't seem as bad as other horror properties. So for me, and you can tell me how you feel as being someone that doesn't watch horror nearly as much as I do, but for me, I actually don't find the episodes scary. I do find them to be intriguing, but I also find them to be very strange and at times very gross. Specifically, the second one was more gross than the first one, and then some of the later episodes also get a little bit gross. But my feeling is not that this is scary. If you're somebody who does not like scary things, I think that there's an element of fear to this, but I don't feel like it's so strong that it would keep people from being able to watch it. I almost feel like it's kind of almost like um, a thriller more so than a straight up horror for me. Looking at it at least. But how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I I agree because I don't like watching scary stuff at all, but this was easy enough to watch. Like there are things that are much harder to watch. Like I'm sure what was that you wanted to watch like Lights Out,
Yeah, lights out.
and I was happy to not have to watch it because I knew that that would be scary, and I had like we didn't end up watching it, so I didn't have to watch it. Sorry, I know that I'm probably a little quieter than Chris, but that's because I have a graveyard on my head and I can't reach the mic.
But yeah, so all in all, but you enjoyed the two episodes you watched.
Yeah, no, and I thought about like, do I want to watch more? And I, as much as I enjoyed watching these two episodes, they both gave me quite a bit of anxiety, especially the second one. And so I'm not sure if I could stomach watching more, even though like I enjoyed it so much. I think I would just have to really be mentally prepared to watch
Yes,
them.
I can honestly say from watching four episodes at this point that they get worse. And I don't mean
Oh
worse from
gosh.
like a it's bad. I mean worse as in the content becomes a lot more difficult and challenging to digest. Um, so I do think the third episode is worth your time. If you feel like you're able to get up to being able to watch it, because the third episode is genuinely very interesting and it's not what you expect it to be, and it kind of has a bittersweet ending, but it's still kind of like a kind of hurrah moment. But the fourth episode, I wouldn't watch at all. The fourth episode, I was like, I can't watch this again. And it's not even because it's scary. It's just because it is so daggone weird and creepy. And it left me feeling so uncomfortable. So I would not suggest you watch the fourth episode. But I can definitely say that I think you can handle the third episode and it's interesting. But obviously, take your time, get to it only when you're ready. Because, yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's so hard to say because they're so interesting, and like they're really good. It's
They're
just
really creative too. They're very
yeah,
creative.
it's just hard to watch.
Yeah.
And I don't know how else to explain this. Like I want to watch it, but I don't want to watch it.
Mm, yeah. And then I guess that would say that Guillermo, uh, the Guillermo del Toro has done his job. So, but we're running up on time here. Is there anything else you want to say about the Cabinet of Curiosities before we end this segment of our YouTube recording?
I maybe just wanted to point out the theme, the opening theme, because
Oh
even
yeah.
like it's really cool. It's just as interesting as the show because we're being shown all these different things, and I'm sure that each element is associated with a different episode.
Episode. Yeah.
And the theme song is like perfect.
It.
It's exactly the vibe
Mm,
of the show
mm.
itself. So I just want to applaud that and point it out because I really like it. I mean, like the animation of it isn't like super good, but
Mm-hmm.
it does the job. It's like good enough. It doesn't need to be more. I mean, it can be if you really if they really wanted to throw more money at it, but I think it's completely perfect the way it is.
Agreed. I'm glad that you brought that up because I really like the opening too. My roommate and I, whenever we watch it, we make sure that we usually don't skip the opening because we love seeing the elements and also try to guess to see if there are elements of other episodes we've already seen or episode or elements that we will see in the episode. So it can be a lot of fun. But yeah, that's what we thought about the Cabinet of Curiosities, the first two episodes. Have you guys seen it? Are you familiar with Guillermo del Toro's other works? Are you a fan of his? Do you want to see Cabinet of Curiosities? And are you going to watch the whole thing? Or after those first couple episodes, is it a little too much for you? Whatever you thought about it, comment below. Let us know. And way down there, if you give us a like, share, and subscribe. Even if you don't, though, I have been Chris, and this has been
Cheryl, sorry, this has been Cheryl, and happy Halloween. We'll see you all next time.